Investment in infrastructure, a reauthorization of the transportation bill. The House has done that. The Senate is hopefully working on that. The reauthorization of the Clean Water Act, the House has done that. The Senate hopefully is working on that. Aid to state and local governments is being done somewhat. Creation, but needs to be done much more because we have 48 states that are in danger of cutting off spending, and it does us precious little good at the federal level to increase spending to create jobs at the state level is decreasing by the same amount. That's why we have to give them some help. Creating jobs, that hasn't been taken up yet. Targeted job creation by the federal government hasn't been taken up yet, but it will be. And the last one, the TARP money, it hasn't been done yet. Loans aren't being made to small and middle-sized businesses and middle-sized manufacturers that actually can create jobs. We think we ought to take that TARP money that's been not spent, money that's been paid back, send it through small regional banks so that they can do immediate lending to small and mid-sized business. That'll create jobs. Hopefully we'll see some of that happen. It's not been done yet.
What do you see as the major roadblocks to getting that passed?
Weak and recalcitrant politicians. And a Republican Party that's more disciplined than anybody imagined, that is determined to see this president fail, and so they really won't work for the interests of the country. I mean, they fought against health care. They fought against the stimulus package. They had no alternatives except to say no. We think that's a tragic thing for the country, and we hope that they finally come to their senses and start thinking about what's best for the country instead of what's best for the next election.
Wouldn't more stimulus signify more debt? And how would stimulus investment get to the root of the systemic weaknesses that led to the recession?
Well, stimulus will help us create jobs, and would it lead to more debt? Well, let me pose this to you here. Let me do a survey. How many people here can afford to live in the house they're in? Raise your hand. How many people paid cash for the house that they live in? Wow. One person paid cash. The rest of us had to buy it on time, right? We could afford that house, but we had to do it on time. That's the same thing with the job program. We can afford a job program of the size necessary to right the economy. We just may have to pay for it over time. So in the long term, it won't mean more debt. It will mean less debt. The more people we put back to work. Look at what the Chinese did. They spent 9% of their GDP on stimulus, and they spent all of it in China. We spent a little bit over 2% of our GDP, and we spent some of it in the United States. Most of it went out, or not most of it, but some of it went out. For instance, a windmill. If you buy a windmill abroad, 62 cents out of every dollar is used to stimulate somebody else's economy rather than our economy. So we create jobs, that creates demand. Demand then fuels the economy. What we had, and I want to come back to something I said in the speech, what we've had for the last 30 years is a low-wage, high-consumption economy. And to bridge that contradiction, we borrowed. We now know that that is a system that cannot long endure. So what will be the new engine that fuels the economy? More debt? It has to be good jobs where the wealth that we produce get distributed a little more fairly so that everybody can then demand something. Because one person, a millionaire with, well, say $100, one person with $100 creates a whole less demand than 100 people with $1. What we have to do is make sure that the wealth gets spread out a little bit more so we can actually build this economy on strength. The other thing that has to be done as part of the question is to re-regulate the economy. If we only stimulate the economy and go back to the same economy that we had, the same result will happen. The people at the top will walk away with the vast majority of what's produced, and the rest of the country will see more jobs go overseas. So it's up to us. We're at a crossroads. We're urging people to act quickly to create those jobs because there's suffering going on. Hopefully they'll do that. If they don't, I think they truly will face the scorn of the American populace in the elections in the fall.
The demand for shorter work time was a traditional response to unemployment by the American labor movement. In the 19th century, the struggle for the 8-hour day was the core of union policy. During the Depression, the demand for a 30-hour work week was the AFL's priority. Why are unions not today demanding a 4-day work week?
Good question. Let's start back with, and we'd like to have a 4-day work week if we got paid for 5. Unfortunately, we're getting a no-day work week, and we're getting paid for no days, as it is right now. We get laid off. When wages started to stagnate, and maybe I should go back just a little bit, from 1946 to 1973, wages in this country doubled. Productivity doubled, and so did wages. We had a good thing going. We built the middle class. Greatest expansion of wealth in the history of mankind. And the interesting thing during that period of time, the bottom 2 quartiles income was increasing faster than the people at the top, so the wage gap was collapsing. From 73 to date, productivity has continued up, but wages have stagnated, absolutely stagnated. So workers went through 4 or 5 different strategies to try to compete with that. When our wages stagnated, the first thing we tried to do is work longer hours to get overtime to make up for what we weren't getting in raises. And when that didn't work, we sent somebody from the family, another person or 2 from the family out into the workforce so that at least family incomes held up. When that didn't work, we took on a 2nd or a 3rd job. That didn't work either. Then we got lucky and we hit the housing or the high-tech bubble of the 90s. And people's wages weren't going up, but they look at that 401k and they'd come to me at the mine site or at the work site. Look at this. Look at my 401k. They felt rich. So they felt like they could borrow. And they did borrow. And then the high-tech bubble collapsed. And then we got lucky again. The housing bubble took off. And now my $100,000 house is worth $200,000, so I can borrow. So I did. What we're having is an economy that forces people just to get by, to work longer and more jobs. Retirees whose pension has been taken away from them happen to go back out into the workforce. Yeah, we should have a work system where we work fewer hours and make more money. But this economy of the last 30 years has made that impossible for most Americans. It's an economy that has ground people up, that has taken jobs and turned back time and lowered the wages. You have people working for wages today that are lower than they were in the 70s. You can't work fewer hours on wages to pay for 2010 commodities with wages that were 1970s. So it's up to us to create those jobs, and that's why the Employee Free Choice Act is so important. Because we get a chance to make those jobs good jobs, create a better balance in the economy, create a real demand for products so that we don't have to borrow our way into the middle class. We can actually bargain our way into the middle class.
Speaking of the Employee Free Choice Act, what are the prospects for labor law reform in 2010, even just a scaled-down version of the Employee Free Choice Act, given the momentum shift against the Democrats and general election year anxiety?
I think you'll see the Employee Free Choice Act passed in the first quarter of 2010. You'll see it have some real effect. We will start creating and making good jobs in this country again.
In regards to the Employee Free Choice Act, it seems you and SEIU President Andy Stern have different messaging. Stern is saying there will be a vote. You have said there may not be. Who is right? What's going on?
The Employee Free Choice Act? Question's wrong.
Okay.
I never said that there wouldn't be a vote. I said there would be. Maybe he said there would be. I don't know.
Okay.
But I think we're 100% in agreement on that. I think everybody in the labor movement is 100% in lockstep that, whether you're in the AFL-CIO or not in the AFL-CIO.
Some healthcare reform supporters have expressed frustration that President Obama has not weighed in more forcefully to shape the legislation and push it through Congress. How do you feel about his approach to the Employee Free Choice Act, which has been stalled since March?
The President fully supports the Employee Free Choice Act. The Vice President fully supports the Employee Free Choice Act. A vast majority of the members of the House support the Employee Free Choice Act. The vast majority of the people in the Senate support the Employee Free Choice Act. And I think we're going to have the Employee Free Choice Act, despite the determined efforts of the Republican Party and a group of business people who really don't want any kind of labor law reform at all.